Have you ever walked into a room and felt the presence of someone before they even spoke? Not because they were the loudest, not because they tried to impress anyone, but because something about them was grounded, calm, certain. That's not a coincidence. That's silent power, and it's one of the most magnetic forces a person can carry. The world is full of noise, opinions, performances, distractions. But real strength? It's quiet. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need attention. It simply is. And when you understand this, everything about how you carry yourself begins to change. There's a lie most people believe, that you need to be loud, bold, or flashy to stand out. But true presence doesn't need to announce itself. It resonates. It's felt. And that kind of presence, silent, unshaken, undeniable, is built from within. It's not about pretending to be confident. It's about removing the need to prove anything. That's what makes someone unforgettable. Because in a world full of performers, the one who simply is, who doesn't chase, who doesn't compete, becomes the one who draws attention without trying. That's the quiet kind of attractive that changes the energy of every room you walk into. Think about it. How often have you felt invisible because you didn't want to fight for the spotlight? How many times have you held yourself back, thinking you needed to be louder, more exciting, more on? You don't. You've just never been taught the power of stillness, of self-respect, of quiet confidence. But that power is inside you right now. It's not about changing who you are. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you that you weren't enough. Before the pressure to perform drowned out your natural presence. Before you believed silence was weakness. It never was. It was your edge. You just forgot how to use it. Stay with this, because what you're about to learn will change the way you see yourself and the way others respond to you. You'll learn how to attract effortlessly, not by chasing approval, but by commanding respect. You'll stop trying to be seen and start becoming unforgettable. You'll learn habits that don't just make people notice you, they make people feel you. And that kind of impact doesn't fade. It stays with them, just like it stays with you. This isn't about tricks or tactics, it's about alignment. It's about unlocking the energy that comes when your body, mind, and presence speak one silent message. I don't need the world's attention. I already have my own. By the end of this, you'll see why being silently attractive isn't about hiding. It's about owning your space, owning your energy, owning your value without saying a word. And when you do that, people notice, without you trying, without you speaking, without you moving. Because presence isn't something you chase, it's something you become. And that journey starts right now. Calmness is rare, and in a chaotic world, rarity is magnetic. When everything around you spins with noise, distraction, and emotional reactivity, the person who remains still becomes a point of gravity. People feel it, even if they can't explain it. It's not just about staying calm, it's about mastering yourself. Because when you can control your emotions, you start to control the room. That's not arrogance, that's internal alignment, that's silent strength, and it's built, not inherited. Most people live in reaction. Their moods shift with the weather. Their confidence rises or falls based on who's watching. They walk into a room scanning for approval, validation, acceptance. But when you enter with calm eyes, a steady heartbeat, and zero need to prove, the energy shifts. People don't just see you, they feel you. And that's what makes calmness so powerful. It's not passive. It's dominance in its purest form. Not the kind that intimidates, the kind that reassures, that stabilizes, that makes people feel safe just by being near you. This stillness isn't the absence of emotion, it's control. It's the ability to feel everything and still choose your response. That kind of control doesn't make you cold, it makes you magnetic. Because while others are impulsive, you're intentional. While they react, you reflect. And that reflection builds trust, not just from others, but from yourself. Every time you resist the pull to speak just to be heard, to lash out when triggered, to mirror someone's chaos, you build self-respect. And self-respect is always attractive. You won't need to talk about how confident you are. Your energy will speak louder than your words ever could. When you're calm, people assume you know something they don't. They project strength onto your silence. They respect your groundedness because it gives them something solid to lean on. And whether they admit it or not, that's what people crave. Stability, presence, power without pressure. When you develop this stillness, you don't have to chase moments, you become the moment. And it starts with breathing, with awareness, with choosing, again and again, not to be pulled by every emotion that knocks on your door. You start noticing your body, your posture, your tone. You slow down, not to be passive, but to be precise. The slower you move, the more control you gain. And that control rewires your identity. You stop needing chaos to feel alive. You stop being addicted to reaction. You become the eye of the storm, the calm in the center, unshaken by what spins around you. This is how presence is born. not by performing, not by speaking louder, but by learning to be still in the places others panic. That stillness becomes your superpower, and you'll notice something unexpected. When you no longer need attention, it begins to find you. When you no longer chase validation, respect shows up. Because in the end, real strength doesn't scream. It doesn't demand. It just is. And the world can't help but notice. A slow, genuine smile speaks louder than 1,000 perfect words. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't seek approval. It simply radiates from a place of inner peace. And that's why it captures people. In a world where everyone is rushing to impress, a calm, delayed smile says something different. It says, I'm not trying to be liked. I already accept myself. That kind of energy draws others in without effort. It makes them feel something they didn't know they were missing. Warmth without desperation. Openness without need. Confidence without noise. This is not the smile you put on for photos. It's not the forced grin people use to hide discomfort. It's the kind that arrives slowly, naturally, when you're grounded, when you're fully present, when you're not in a hurry to be seen because you know exactly who you are. A slow smile creates space. It disarms defenses. It doesn't shout, look at me. It whispers, I'm at peace, and you can be too. That kind of expression carries power, because it's not performed, it's felt. People pick up on authenticity faster than you think. Subconsciously, we all scan faces for truth, for congruence, for signals of safety. And when your face says, I'm not pretending, others respond with trust. You become someone they lean toward without even realizing why. That's the psychology of connection. It's not built on perfect lines or rehearsed charm. It's built on being real. And real is rare, especially when everyone is trying so hard to be something. You don't need to plaster a smile across your face to be likable. You need to let it come from alignment. When you slow down, your energy shifts. You're no longer broadcasting insecurity. You're signaling calm assurance. That makes your smile feel different. It becomes something others remember, not because it was bright, but because it was honest. And in a world addicted to appearances, honesty is stunning. This isn't about looking happier. It's about being anchored. And when you're anchored, your body speaks it before you do. A genuine smile doesn't come from thinking you're better than anyone. It comes from knowing you don't have to compete. That grounded knowing is what people feel. It's what they trust. It's what attracts without explanation. Because when your face says, I'm not performing, the world lets its guard down. Start noticing when your smile feels forced. Breathe into those moments. Pause, and then let it rise from a place of calm, not pressure. You'll begin to feel the shift inside you first. Then you'll see the shift around you. People respond to presence more than perfection. A slow smile is presence made visible. It says you're here, in the moment, with no need to rush, prove, or please. And that quiet confidence will echo louder than anything you could say. Your eyes reveal everything. Before you speak, before you move, your gaze has already introduced you. It's not about staring. It's not about control. It's about presence. Intentional eye contact says, I see you, and I'm not hiding. It's not confrontational. It's connected. Most people avoid it. They glance, look away, fidget, or scan the room to escape discomfort. But when you meet someone's eyes with steadiness, not to dominate, but to be fully there, you send a different signal. One of depth, one of self-possession, one of silent confidence that asks for nothing and speaks volumes. Your gaze becomes a mirror. When you're grounded, calm, and clear within, your eyes project it outward. And people respond. They don't always know why, but they feel it. They feel seen. And feeling seen is rare. That's what makes it unforgettable. It builds trust faster than words. It builds curiosity. It builds respect. Because the way you look at someone tells them how you feel about yourself. If you're unsure, scattered, or desperate to be liked, it shows. But if you hold your gaze with ease, if you're comfortable in silence, if you let your eyes rest without fear, the message is undeniable. You know who you are. And people are drawn to those who know. This is not about intensity. It's about sincerity, not trying to prove power, but allowing your presence to be felt without force. That shift happens when you let go of needing to be impressive, when you stop trying to control how you're perceived. The eyes don't lie, and that's your advantage. Because when your gaze is clear and calm, it tells the truth before your words ever arrive. It says, I'm not hiding, I'm here, and I'm enough. That's a language deeper than words. Practice being present with your eyes, not aggressive, not evasive, present. Hold eye contact not because it's a technique, but because you're actually listening, because you're actually grounded, because your mind isn't racing, your insecurities aren't leading, and your worth isn't tied to their reaction. That's what changes everything. People feel when you're trying. They also feel when you're settled. And settled is magnetic. Your gaze will challenge you. It will show you where you still flinch, where you still fear being seen, where you still carry doubt. Use that discomfort as your path forward. Because the more comfortable you become with holding someone's gaze, the more secure you become within yourself. You begin to trust your presence. And when you trust your presence, others do too. That trust becomes the foundation of silent attraction. It's not about what you look like. It's about how you look. With intention, with stillness, with honesty. Let your eyes speak the truth your voice doesn't need to. Let them reflect the calm you've built, the strength you've earned, and the confidence you no longer chase. When your gaze is steady, your silence becomes unforgettable. Posture speaks before your mouth does. Before anyone hears your voice, before you say a single word, your body is already making a statement. Slouched shoulders whisper insecurity. Nervous movements hint at self-doubt. But a straight spine, open chest, and grounded stance send a silent message of certainty. This isn't about looking rigid or trying to appear confident. It's about letting your body reflect the truth you're choosing to believe, that you are already enough, that you don't need to shrink to be accepted, that you deserve to take up space without apology. There's a psychology behind posture. Your mind follows your body. When you stand tall, your brain gets the signal that you are strong, that you are safe, that you are in control. And the people around you feel it too. They respond to the unspoken command of presence. Not dominance, not arrogance. Presence. Quiet strength without the need to posture. You don't lean in to convince. You don't shift nervously to impress. You are still, aligned and composed, not because you're pretending, but because you've remembered your worth. This doesn't come from perfection. It comes from awareness. Every time you enter a space, your posture becomes your first impression, not in a superficial way, but in a deeply human way. Because posture is a reflection of how you carry your story. Are you carrying yourself like someone hiding from life, or like someone who belongs in the room? The answer is not in your mind. It's in your spine, your shoulders, your breath. And when you choose to rise, even when you don't feel ready, your body begins to rewrite your internal dialogue. You don't fake confidence, you embody it. That shift is powerful, because it doesn't require attention. It doesn't need a stage. It quietly commands respect. And people feel that. They lean in not because you're loud, but because you're steady, because your energy tells them you don't need anything from them. You're not seeking approval. You're standing in alignment. That's what draws people. Not how much you say, but how much you hold. The world is trained to notice energy, and energy always follows posture. You could say all the right things, but if your body is small, uncertain, or disconnected, the message is lost. But when your presence enters first, shoulders back, chest open, eyes forward, your silence becomes enough. Your stillness becomes powerful. Your posture becomes a message of self-respect, and that respect becomes contagious. Practice walking slowly, standing tall, moving with intention. Let each motion carry the weight of someone who knows who they are. Not to be admired, but to be clear. Not to perform, but to align. When your body aligns with your values, something inside you locks in. You stop reaching. You stop chasing. You settle into who you were always meant to be. And that settled energy makes people notice, even in silence. Especially in silence. Silence becomes magnetic when it's filled with meaning. Most people rush to fill every pause, fearing that quiet means disconnection. But the opposite is true. When you're comfortable in silence, you project depth. You show that your presence doesn't depend on constant sound, that your value isn't measured by how much you speak, but by what your energy says when you say nothing. That's where true influence lives. Not in the words, but in the space between them. It's in the calm pauses, the thoughtful stillness, the quiet moments where others feel your presence more than hear it. Silence unnerves people who haven't faced themselves. But to the grounded, it feels like home. Because silence invites authenticity. It brings down the masks. It reveals what's real. And when you can sit with silence without flinching, you create space for others to drop their performances too. That space becomes sacred. In that space, trust is built. And that trust becomes the foundation of every powerful connection you'll ever form. You don't need to entertain. You don't need to fill the air. You just need to be. Fully, intentionally, and without apology. Silence forces presence. And presence is irresistible. When you stop speaking just to be heard, your words begin to matter more. You speak when it's needed, not when it's expected. You don't interrupt. You don't over-explain. You listen fully. And when you finally do speak, people lean in. Because they've learned that your voice is worth the wait. That restraint carries weight. It shows maturity. It shows confidence. It shows that you're not addicted to being understood. You're at peace even when others don't get it. That self-containment is powerful. There is a difference between silence from fear and silence from mastery. Fear avoids, hides, and hopes not to be seen. But mastery chooses quiet because it doesn't need to convince. It's a calm refusal to compete for space. It's the stillness that says, I know my value. I don't need to chase yours. When your silence is chosen, not forced, it becomes magnetic. You move differently. You listen better. You draw people in, not with volume, but with gravity. Practice holding space without filling it. Let silence do the talking. Feel the discomfort, and don't rush to escape it. Learn to breathe in that space. Learn to trust that you are still enough when nothing is being said. Because when you truly believe that, others will too. That belief begins to show up in how you sit, how you listen, how you carry yourself in every room you enter, and that quiet confidence will always outshine empty noise. Silence, when held with power, is not the absence of connection. It's the foundation of it. It's where presence becomes real, where energy becomes undeniable, and where the ones who've done the inner work become impossible to ignore. Not because they said the most, but because they didn't need to. Self-restraint is not weakness. It's quiet power in its highest form. In a world where reaction is instant and impulsiveness is normalized, the ability to pause is rare, and rare things carry weight. When someone criticizes you, challenges you, or tries to provoke you, the need to defend yourself rises quickly. But when you can hold that energy without spilling it, you demonstrate something few can: control. Not the kind that represses, but the kind that understands timing, discernment, and strength. Because power doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. Resisting the urge to react isn't suppression. It's self-respect. It's knowing that your energy is too valuable to be thrown at every opinion, every insult, every situation that tugs at your emotions. Most people speak to be right. They move to be seen. They react to avoid the sting of discomfort. But those who carry presence know that reaction often wastes the very power they've spent years building. So instead they observe, they feel, they breathe, and then they choose. That choice, made from clarity, not chaos, creates a silent gravity. People notice. They might not say it out loud, but they feel it. This person cannot be shaken easily. Holding back isn't about fear. It's about maturity. Not everything requires a response. Not every feeling deserves expression in the moment it arises. You are not a slave to your impulses. You are the gatekeeper of your energy, and when you own that role fully, you become someone others instinctively respect. They can feel that you're not here to play emotional games. You're not swayed by drama. You're not desperate for approval. You're grounded. And grounded people radiate something that noise never can: stillness with depth. Discipline of emotion creates trust. When people see that you don't flinch under pressure, that you don't lash out when triggered, that you don't need to win every interaction, they begin to feel safe in your presence. Because your silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you know not everything needs to be said. You've mastered the pause. And that pause, that space between stimulus and response, is where real confidence lives. Let others be loud. Let them be reactive. Let them seek validation through chaos. You are building something stronger. You are becoming someone whose silence speaks louder than their defense. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to always have the last word. You know that some battles win themselves when you simply refuse to engage, not from pride, but from wisdom. Because peace is your power now. And that power, carried with quiet, controlled intensity, becomes your greatest form of attraction. The more you control your response, the more you control your life. The more you honor your energy, the more others are drawn to it. And the less you seek to be understood, the more you begin to understand yourself. That is the root of silent strength, and that strength becomes unshakable. Stillness is strength in its most refined form. It's the opposite of chaos, the antidote to insecurity, the quiet force behind every grounded person you've ever met. In a world that teaches constant motion, stillness feels unfamiliar. But unfamiliar doesn't mean weak. It means powerful in ways most never understand. Stillness is not about doing nothing. It's about being completely present while doing only what matters. It's the kind of energy that doesn't rush, doesn't chase, doesn't panic. It's rooted, deliberate, and calm under pressure. And people can't ignore it. They sense it even before they can explain it. You don't need to fight to be noticed when your stillness speaks for you. It holds an energy of quiet certainty, of someone who has faced their own noise, dissolved it, and now walks without needing attention. Stillness is not the absence of life. It is life under control. Life directed, not scattered. Life led by intention, not reaction. And that level of control isn't loud. It's magnetic. When you walk into a room carrying that kind of calm, people feel it. They lower their voices. They slow down, not because you told them to, but because your energy gave them permission to. Most people are addicted to movement because stillness forces awareness. In stillness, there's nowhere to hide, no distraction, no validation, just you, raw and exposed to your own thoughts. That's why it's powerful, because it's honest. And that honesty builds something that movement never will. Depth. The kind of depth that doesn't need to chase shallow approval. It already knows who it is. It already knows what it brings. Stillness is not passive. It is preparation. It is composure. It is clarity embodied. Every time you resist the urge to rush, to interrupt, to insert yourself just to feel significant, you're training something greater. You're learning to let the moment come to you instead of forcing it. You're learning to lead with calm instead of chaos. You're teaching your nervous system to stop reacting and start observing. And in that space you become deeply powerful. Not because you've done something dramatic, but because you've stopped needing to. Let stillness be your posture, not just physically, but mentally. A mind that doesn't race for approval. A heart that doesn't panic for validation. A presence that doesn't shift to please. That kind of stillness becomes unforgettable. It moves differently. It lives differently. And it leaves an impact not by force, but by depth. The most silently attractive people are not the ones who do the most. They're the ones who've learned to master stillness. They carry no need to prove, no need to explain, no need to fill space. And because of that, their presence becomes the loudest thing in the room. Without words, without effort. Just stillness and strength. People are drawn to those who know how to observe. Not to judge, not to compare, but to truly see. Observation is more than looking. It's awareness sharpened into a skill. Most people walk through life half-present, speaking more than they understand, reacting more than they notice. But the ones who attract without trying have mastered the art of paying attention. They notice tone, energy, micro-movements, shifts in emotion. Not because they're nosy, but because they're awake. And that awareness makes others feel deeply seen. There is something powerful about being in the presence of someone who listens without interrupting, who watches without controlling, who notices without speaking. It creates a magnetic field of trust. You don't become this by force. You become this by choosing to slow down your need to be the center. By releasing the hunger to dominate the conversation, to impress, to make everything about you. The moment you decide to care more about understanding than being understood, your energy changes. Your words carry more depth, because they come from a place of connection, not performance. And people can feel that. They feel when you're present with them. They feel when your attention isn't divided. They feel when your eyes aren't searching for validation but grounded in calm interest. This kind of presence doesn't make people nervous. It makes them relax. Because when they feel truly seen, they stop needing to pretend. They put down their masks. They breathe a little deeper. And that shift is rare. So rare, in fact, that people start craving your presence. Not because you said something brilliant, but because you saw them clearly. You were still enough inside to actually notice who they were. And that stillness, paired with observation, becomes unforgettable. Observation builds emotional intelligence. It teaches you timing. It shows you when to speak and when to hold back. It sharpens your intuition. It helps you move through social spaces with precision, grace, and calm. You stop missing moments. You stop reacting blindly. You start understanding what's actually happening beneath the surface. And that understanding becomes a gift. Not just for you, but for everyone around you. People feel safe around those who observe more than they speak, because observation without ego is rare. It's not about analyzing or manipulating. It's about respecting the human experience enough to witness it without needing to change it, and that kind of witnessing feels like peace. When you give others the gift of being seen, without judgment, without interruption, without noise, you leave a mark they don't forget. Not because you demanded their attention, but because you offered your presence fully. You don't need to prove your intelligence when your awareness shows it. You don't need to chase respect when your presence earns it. The power is in how deeply you can see without needing to be seen. Because the quietest person in the room, if they're truly paying attention, often carries the strongest presence of all. The ability to hold mystery is a rare form of silent attraction. In a world that overshares, overexplains, and constantly performs, the one who keeps something back becomes instantly intriguing. Not secretive, not withdrawn, just disciplined with their inner world. Mystery isn't about hiding, it's about preserving. It's knowing that not everything you think, feel, or know must be displayed. It's choosing to reveal with purpose, not desperation. And that restraint builds intensity. It creates an invisible pull. People are drawn to what they can't easily define, and when you refuse to be fully exposed, you become magnetic by nature. You don't owe the world full access to your thoughts. Your silence, your limits, your reserved energy, it all creates space. And space is where respect is born. People start to wonder. They lean in. They try to figure you out, not because you're being distant, but because you're not trying to be overly available. That quiet boundary becomes power. It teaches others that your inner world is not up for casual consumption, that you have depth, and that depth won't be given away without meaning. Mystery isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about honoring the fact that your value doesn't depend on constant validation. You don't need to explain every move. You don't need to post every opinion. You don't need to narrate your every emotion. When you hold mystery, you speak only when necessary. You choose your words carefully. You reveal your thoughts through action, not performance. And in doing so, you elevate yourself. You become rare in a culture that rewards noise. People respect those who carry themselves like they have nothing to prove. And mystery reinforces that. Because when you don't scramble to be understood, when you're not rushing to explain your worth, it shows a kind of confidence that can't be taught. It comes from knowing who you are, from being anchored deep within, not swayed by the opinions or expectations of the world. That kind of self-possession builds trust. It commands attention, not through volume, but through presence. You don't need to be hard to reach to be mysterious. You just need to be intentional. With your time, with your energy, with your truth. When people see that you don't hand yourself over easily, they begin to take you more seriously. Your presence becomes more valuable. Your words land deeper. Your energy feels earned. And in a world of excess, that kind of restraint becomes gold. Let people wonder. Let them feel the strength of your silence. Let them notice that you don't need to be loud to be heard. The less you try to be impressive, the more power you hold. Keep a piece of yourself sacred. Keep a part of your soul untouched by noise. That mystery becomes your presence. And presence, when it's rooted in inner strength and quiet confidence, becomes unforgettable. Certainty doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks in a calm tone, moves with quiet intent, and walks without explaining itself. When you radiate inner certainty, you don't need to seek agreement. You don't need to chase reactions. You don't wait for permission to be who you are. Your sense of direction comes from within. It's not loud. It's not arrogant. It's grounded, clear, and immovable. People feel it when you speak, not because you're trying to convince them, but because your energy carries the weight of self-trust. You believe yourself. And that's what makes others believe you too. Most people drift through conversations trying to gain favor, adjusting their words, softening their truth, diluting their presence to fit in. But when you walk into a room with certainty, you don't adjust to the room. The room adjusts to you, not because you demanded it, but because your clarity made space for it. Certainty isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about being at peace with who you are, even when others don't understand it. That peace makes people stop. It makes them take notice. Because while they're still looking for something to hold on to, you've already found it within yourself. Inner certainty doesn't depend on constant reassurance. It isn't built on applause or attention. It's forged in solitude, when you've had to face your doubts and keep going anyway. When you've failed, recalibrated, and refused to abandon yourself. That kind of self-loyalty turns into an aura that can't be faked. It's not in your words. It's in your tone, your eyes, your posture. It's in the way you don't flinch when misunderstood. It's in the way you stand your ground without becoming defensive. Because you're not performing for approval. You're rooted in truth. Certainty draws people in because it provides contrast. In a world full of uncertainty, confusion, constant noise, someone who knows who they are stands out. They become a lighthouse, steady, anchored, present. You don't have to argue for your value when you're certain of it. You don't have to force people to listen when your presence already speaks. The more you trust your own voice, the more powerful it becomes. Not through volume, but through resonance, through integrity, through consistency. Being silently attractive is not about showing off. It's about showing up fully, confidently, quietly. When you move from a place of self-belief, you start speaking with precision. You stop over-explaining. You start trusting the pause, the silence, the weight behind fewer words. That's where power lives. In the energy beneath your words, in the calm beneath your choices, in the strength beneath your presence. Let your certainty be your signature. Not the kind that needs to be broadcasted, but the kind that can't be hidden. Let it shape your tone, guide your steps, and fuel your presence. Because when you carry that level of self-trust, you don't need to chase anything. You become the gravity others naturally feel drawn to. Confidence becomes magnetic when it's grounded in humility. When you know your worth but have nothing to prove, your presence starts speaking louder than any words ever could. You stop trying to convince. You stop chasing attention. You move differently. Because real confidence doesn't shout, it resonates. It's not inflated by ego but powered by alignment. It comes from knowing who you are, accepting your flaws, and refusing to shrink for the comfort of others. That combination of strength and softness creates a presence that's rare. It demands respect without asking for it. Most people confuse arrogance with confidence, but the difference is sharp. Arrogance needs to be seen. It craves validation. Confidence doesn't. Confidence is silent because it's stable. It's rooted. It's not performative. You know you bring value. You know your words matter. You know your presence impacts. So you don't need to dominate the room. You don't need to compete. You don't need to tear others down to feel big. True confidence lifts the energy around it. It creates space. It invites people to rise, not shrink. That's why it becomes unforgettable. The most powerful kind of confidence is quiet because it's earned. It comes from doing the hard work on yourself. From walking through self-doubt and coming out the other side with clarity. From learning how to sit with failure, not fear it. From understanding that you're not perfect, and you don't need to be. And when you accept that, you give yourself the freedom to just be. To speak when you have something meaningful to say. To act without explaining yourself. To lead without demanding attention. That kind of presence is more powerful than any performance. You don't need to announce your worth, you only need to live it. Show it in your consistency. Show it in how you treat people when no one's watching. Show it in how you carry yourself when the room goes silent. Let others feel it without having to tell them. That is what makes someone unforgettable. Not noise, not bravado, but the energy of someone who knows who they are and walks in that truth. When you stop trying to impress, you begin to influence. When you stop needing praise, you start radiating peace. And people remember peace. They remember the ones who made them feel calm, strong, grounded. Not because they said something flashy, but because their energy spoke of quiet certainty. Confidence is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting yourself even when you don't. And that trust speaks volumes in silence. Become the person who doesn't need to chase attention to feel alive. Become the one who holds their power without flaunting it. Be steady. Be quiet. Be sure. Because when your confidence is no longer about being seen, but about being aligned, that's when it becomes magnetic. That's when you stop chasing validation and start becoming a source of strength for others. Attractive energy begins where emotional control is mastered. The person who can stay calm when others panic, grounded when others overreact, and stable when things feel uncertain, holds a power that cannot be ignored. Emotional discipline is not about suppressing your feelings. It's about mastering them. It's knowing how to feel fully without letting emotions take the wheel. It's learning how to respond, not react. That kind of self-command builds trust. People are drawn to those who make them feel safe, not through force, but through unshakable inner balance. When your emotions don't own you, your presence starts to carry quiet authority. Most people are quick to react, driven by moods, impulses, and ego. But the one who pauses, breathes, and chooses their response moves with a different kind of strength. They don't let frustration leak into their tone. They don't let anger cloud their judgment. They don't allow fear to shrink their decisions. They stay rooted. And that root becomes magnetic, because it tells others that chaos won't move you, that you are dependable, not because life is easy, but because you've trained yourself to rise above it. That kind of consistency builds respect, and respect always draws people closer. The emotionally disciplined person doesn't overshare in the heat of the moment. They don't weaponize silence or use emotions to manipulate. They're precise. They understand that not every emotion deserves an audience, that not every thought must be voiced. They speak from alignment, not intensity. And because of that, their words carry weight, their energy holds space, their presence becomes a calm in the middle of storms. That's rare. And rarity commands attention. When you're ruled by your emotions, you become unpredictable. But when you master them, you become dependable. Dependability is quiet strength. It doesn't demand praise, but it always gets noticed. People trust what feels steady. They remember who made them feel safe in a room full of tension. They remember who stayed composed when things got difficult. That memory builds emotional gravity, and emotional gravity creates deep, lasting influence. Attractiveness is not just how you look or speak. It's how you carry your emotions. It's the peace you bring into conversations. It's the energy of someone who doesn't need to prove their mood to be understood. It's the quiet power of restraint. The kind that doesn't push emotions down but lifts them up, filters them, and channels them into purpose. That control isn't cold, it's compassionate. It shows maturity, it shows growth. It shows that you're not a slave to the moment, but a leader of yourself. Learn to watch your emotions like waves. Let them rise, let them pass. Let them inform you, not rule you. And in doing so, you build emotional resilience. You build inner peace. You build presence. The one who controls themselves never has to control others. They become the example, the standard, the anchor. And in a world full of emotional chaos, anchors are unforgettable. Attractiveness deepens when you learn how to hold space for others without needing to fill it. There's a quiet strength in being fully present, without performing, without fixing, without interrupting the moment with your own needs. People feel deeply seen when you allow them to be without trying to shape them, and that's rare. Most rush to speak, Most reach to control, but the one who listens, truly listens, holds more power than the one who tries to dominate. Listening is an act of emotional generosity. It shows that you are secure enough to set your ego aside and strong enough to give someone your full attention. That kind of presence doesn't go unnoticed. It's not about nodding or pretending to care. It's about tuning in so fully that the person in front of you feels like they matter, because they do. And when they feel that from you without judgment, without pressure, they remember you. They remember the stillness in your presence, the calm in your eyes, the steadiness in your silence. That's when attraction becomes emotional, not just physical. That's when it creates connection, not just curiosity. And it starts with restraint. The restraint to not make every conversation about yourself. The restraint to not interrupt with advice. The restraint to allow someone to process while you stay fully there. People crave that kind of space. A space where they don't have to perform, where they don't have to be impressive, where they don't have to fight for attention. And when you can give them that, you become unforgettable. Because most people are waiting to be heard, not judged, understood, not corrected. And if you can offer that without needing anything in return, your presence becomes a gift. One they'll seek again. One they'll value even when you're not around. Holding space is not weakness, it's mastery. It means you've transcended the need to dominate, and instead, chosen to influence with presence, not pressure. It means you've done the work to empty your own mind long enough to make room for someone else's. And that emptiness is powerful. It draws others in because it's safe. It tells them they don't need to be perfect to belong. They can breathe. They can speak. They can be. And you'll still be there, solid and unchanged. That is magnetic. The ability to hold space begins with the willingness to be still, to not rush the moment, to not rush the person, to trust that silence can heal and that presence can lead. And once you understand that, once you embrace it, you stop chasing connection. You become it. You stop demanding attention. You attract it. Because your energy no longer says, "Look at me." It says, "I see you." And that, more than charm, more than words, more than beauty, is what makes someone truly, silently attractive. True inner power becomes magnetic when you no longer need to explain yourself. When you walk through life rooted in your values, aligned with your purpose, and at peace with who you are, you stop seeking validation. You stop performing. You stop over-explaining every choice, every silence, every boundary. And the moment you do that, something shifts. People feel it. They may not know what it is, but they sense the grounded self-respect in your posture, in your words, in your energy. That kind of silent confidence is rare, and because it's rare, it draws others in. Not because you ask for attention, but because you no longer need it. You begin to radiate the kind of presence that speaks louder than noise. When you no longer justify your standards, your schedule, your dreams, or your silence, you become a mirror. You reveal to others what they have yet to own in themselves. That unsettles some, but it awakens the ones who are ready. And that's how you attract not just attention, but alignment. That's how you build relationships rooted in depth, not dependency. Because the moment you stop chasing approval, you create space for something higher, connection that respects your truth. Every time you feel the urge to explain, to defend, to shrink your truth to fit someone's comfort, pause. Ask yourself what you're really trying to protect. If you are clear in your heart, let that be enough. If you are walking in integrity, let your actions do the speaking. When your inner world is anchored, the outer world doesn't have to understand. They will catch up, or they won't. But your peace can't be held hostage by the opinions of others. When you are silent in your self-belief, you speak the loudest kind of message. One that says, "I don't need to convince you to be me." Let people misunderstand you. Let them misjudge your quiet. Let them wrestle with your clarity. You are not here to be explained. You are here to be experienced by those who are ready. You are not here to win people over. You are here to stand in who you are. And the moment you stop over-explaining, you start embodying. You become the message. You become the signal. And those who are meant to find you will. Without you needing to prove anything. Your value doesn't increase when it's recognized. It doesn't disappear when it's ignored. It simply is. Like still water, undisturbed, clear and strong beneath the surface. Be that. Stop narrating your worth. Stop auditioning for spaces that don't see you. Move like you already belong, because when you do, the world adjusts. And the ones who resonate will feel you. Not because you explained yourself, but because you became impossible to ignore. That is the power of silent attraction. That is the power of knowing yourself so deeply, you no longer need to be heard to be understood. There is a quiet magnetism in someone who knows how to manage their emotions with grace. The kind of presence that doesn't explode, doesn't shut down, and doesn't need to broadcast every feeling to feel valid. Emotional self-control is not about suppression. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about owning your emotions without letting them own you. It's the ability to feel anger without turning bitter, to feel hurt without becoming hardened, to feel overwhelmed and still move with intention. That kind of emotional discipline speaks volumes in silence. People feel safer around you because they know you won't react impulsively. You become a calm within chaos, a steady ground in a trembling world. It doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're clear. You've chosen not to hand your emotional state to others. You've decided that your peace is non-negotiable, that you'll feel everything deeply, but you'll process it inwardly, with wisdom, not with drama. This kind of inner mastery radiates strength. You don't have to say much when your energy already communicates. I'm in control of myself. You no longer need to shout to be heard, cry to be seen, or rage to be respected. You let your composure carry the message, and that message is powerful. I trust myself enough to stay grounded no matter what. That stability makes you quietly irresistible. In a world addicted to emotional reactivity, your presence becomes a sanctuary. People gravitate to you not because you perform emotion, but because you've earned the strength to carry it. You become the person who doesn't escalate conflict, who listens without defensiveness, who responds instead of reacts. That is rare. That is powerful. And that kind of emotional restraint isn't just attractive, it's transformational. Mastering your emotional energy is the beginning of self-respect. It's how you stop being pulled by every mood, every opinion, every disruption. It's how you reclaim your time, your focus, your power. The emotionally unstable attract chaos. The emotionally grounded attract clarity. And clarity is magnetic, because it says, I don't need to entertain every trigger. I don't need to react to be real. I can hold space for my feelings without being consumed by them. That is silent strength. That is presence without pressure. And when you cultivate that, you stop needing attention. You start commanding respect. Not by force, not by fear, but by how you carry yourself when no one's watching. That's when your energy starts to lead before your words do. That's when your silence says more than 1,000 arguments. Because you've mastered something most haven't, the ability to remain whole in the face of emotional storms. And that wholeness, that control, that peace under pressure, it's not loud, it doesn't beg, it doesn't prove. It simply exists. And when others see it, they feel it. Not in your words, but in your presence. And that's what makes you silently, unshakably attractive. There's a rare kind of power in someone who doesn't need to be the center of attention to feel worthy. In a world obsessed with validation, the one who moves quietly yet confidently stands out. They don't chase approval. They don't beg to be noticed. They allow their energy to speak before their presence even enters the room. This quiet confidence isn't loud, but it's unforgettable. It's the kind of presence that doesn't compete, it just is. And that presence is built, not born. It's cultivated through deep self-respect, and the decision to no longer depend on the outside world to tell you who you are. When you stop needing constant validation, you begin to radiate strength. People feel drawn to you not because you're trying to be liked, but because you are at peace with yourself. That peace is rare. It's not manufactured, and it can't be faked. It comes from within, built on knowing your worth even when no one claps for you, even when no one sees your progress. It's the calm assurance that says, I don't need to prove anything. I am enough as I am. That kind of inner stillness isn't passive, it's powerful. And that power doesn't scream, it resonates. The less you need, the more you attract. Not because you're playing games, but because people are naturally pulled toward authenticity. And authenticity begins when you're no longer trying to fit into a mold, when you're no longer twisting yourself to be accepted, when you stand in who you are with quiet certainty. That energy is magnetic because it carries no desperation. It's whole, it's present, it's peaceful. People are tired of noise. They crave depth. They crave someone who isn't chasing, someone who isn't performing, someone who knows how to just be. And when you become that person, centered, clear, calm, you don't have to do much. Your silence becomes more powerful than most people's attempts to impress. Your presence alone becomes your message. Because while others are trying to be liked, you're focused on being real. While others are exhausting themselves to be seen, you've already seen yourself. And that shifts everything. Suddenly, you're not the one reaching. You're the one being remembered. Not because you were the loudest, but because you were the most grounded. That kind of attraction lasts. It doesn't fade with trends or attention spans. It sticks. Because people remember how you made them feel. Safe, seen, steady. And they'll come back to that energy again and again. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. So stop chasing the spotlight. Build your inner light. The world will notice. Not because you asked it to, but because you became someone who no longer needs it. And that kind of self-containment, that quiet, steady fire, is what makes you deeply, silently, and irresistibly attractive.